Sara Lee Deluxe Blueberry Bagels might be in your bread box right now. And on that label, the food coloring outranks the blueberries. That's legal because the FDA never wrote a rule for bagels. Part 136 defines 5 bakery products, and a bagel isn't one of them. In 2025, Texas put 5 of that bag's ingredients on a warning label. But the strange part isn't the cheap bagel, it's the expensive one. I'll show you 3 that still boil in real water, one of them for about $2.50. So today, 8 bagel brands you should walk right past, and 3 that are actually worth your cart. So what makes a bagel a real bagel? One thing, and you can see it with your own eyes. A real bagel gets dropped into boiling water before it ever goes near an oven. That boil gelatinizes the starch on the outside instantly. That's where the shiny skin comes from, and the round shape and that chewy pull in the middle. Cut one open and you see 2 textures fighting each other. Crisp shell, dense inside. Boiling costs money. Somebody has to handle every single bagel, drop it, turn it, fish it back out, and keep a kettle running all day. Steam is one touch at the shaping stage. Then the trays roll through a tunnel and nobody picks anything up again. That's why most of the big manufacturers quietly switch to steam. It's faster, it's cheaper, and you get far more bagels an hour out of the same building. What you get back is a soft, dull, bready ring that's flat on the bottom because it never got turned over, and the seeds brush right off because there's no gelatinized skin to hold them. Now the legal part, and this is the whole reason any of this works. 21 CFR Part 136 covers bread, rolls, and buns, enriched, milk, raisin, whole wheat, 5 products. And the word bagel does not appear anywhere in it, so there is no federal standard for what a bagel has to be. Nothing requires boiling. Nothing limits the gums, the dyes, the preservatives, or the artificial sweeteners. The front of the bag can say bakery, deluxe, farmhouse, whatever it likes, and the back does the dirty work. Later, I'll show you a test you can run in your own kitchen in under 60 seconds that tells you exactly which kind you bought. Let's start with the one that has the most history behind it. Number 8 is Lender's. This is the bag in the fridge door or the freezer, and it's probably been in your family longer than any other bagel on this list. Harry Lender was a Jewish baker from Chelm, Poland. He came over in 1927, set up in New Haven, Connecticut, and his sons Sam, Murray, and Marvin built it into the biggest bagel operation on earth. That's a real story. That's a real family, and for most of America, Lender's is the reason there was a bagel in the house at all. Then look what happened to it. Kraft bought them in 1984. Kellogg paid $455 million in 96, then spent $20 million on a television campaign in 97. Aurora Foods bought them in 99 and shut the New Haven bakery down in March of 2000. Then Pinnacle, then ConAgra, and since 2020, Bimbo Bakeries USA. 6 owners. Remember that name, Bimbo, because you're going to hear it 3 more times before we're done. Look at the ingredient list. Flour, water, and then sugar. Sugar is the 3rd ingredient in a plain bagel. Keep reading and you get wheat gluten, then vegetable oil, then calcium propionate and sorbic acid, then monoglycerides, then guar gum. 2 preservatives and a gum in a product that only needs 4 things. And that gum is not there for flavor. It holds water in the crumbs so the bagel stays soft in a sealed bag for a week and a half, which is a job that boiling and eating it fresh used to handle. At Walmart right now, a 6 count is about $2.96. That matters because you are not paying nothing for this. If you've been grabbing a bag every week for the last year, that's roughly $154 on a soft, slightly sweet ring that eats closer to a dinner roll than a bagel. The texture is the giveaway. It's soft edge to edge, it squashes flat under a knife instead of pushing back, and it toasts pale because there's no boiled skin there to crisp up. They're banking on the name. Harry Lender's name is still on that bag, and the recipe it's selling has been through 6 corporate owners since he died. Now the next one costs $1 less, and it has something in it that has no business being in bread dough. Number 7 is Great Value, which is Walmart's own label. This is the bag people reach for when they're being sensible about money. $2.08 for 6 bagels, about 35 cents each. There is nothing wrong with buying cheap food. Cheap food has a place, and I want to be clear about that before I say the next part. Turn the package around. After the flour, water, sugar, and salt, you'll find corn syrup. Corn syrup in a plain bagel, which is supposed to be one of the 4 or 5 simplest things a bakery makes. Then it gets busy. There's a dough conditioner blend, and that's malted barley flour, calcium sulfate, ascorbic acid, and enzymes. Then fermented wheat flour, listed right there as a mold inhibitor. Then, separately, further down, cultured corn syrup solids, also listed as a mold inhibitor. So that's 2 different mold inhibitors and a conditioner packaged in a bagel that costs 35 cents. And get this, corn syrup shows up twice on one label, once as a sweetener and once as part of the preservative system. What you actually get is a bagel that's soft the whole way through and stays soft far too long, which is exactly the point. The corn syrup keeps the crumb wet, the conditioners keep the dough stretchy on a fast line, and the mold inhibitors keep it looking fine long after a real bagel would have gone hard as a rock. Buy that bag weekly for a year and you've spent about $108. That's the cheapest annual number on this whole list, so I'm not going to shout about the money. What bothers me is the other thing. This is the budget bagel, and its ingredient list is roughly 3 times longer than a real New York bagels. A real one is flour, water, salt, yeast, and a little malt. That's it. That's the whole recipe, and it has been the whole recipe for about 400 years. So when the cheapest bag on the shelf needs a conditioner blend and 2 mold inhibitors to get there, the extra stuff isn't going in to make it better. It's going in to make it survive a supply chain. The shortcut isn't buying you a cheaper breakfast, it's buying them a longer shelf life. But the next brand is the one people specifically shop at to get away from all of this. Number 6 is Love and Fresh, which is Aldi's bakery label. Aldi shoppers are some of the most careful label readers in the country. That's the whole reason people drive past 2 other stores to get there, and it's why this one stings. Look at the everything bagels. Calcium propionate, sorbic acid, propionic acid, phosphoric acid, 4 preservatives in one bag of bagels, and then, sitting in the middle of that list, hydrogenated soybean oil. Hydrogenated soybean oil is a liquid oil that's been chemically hardened into a solid fat. It goes in because a solid fat stays stable on a shelf and coats the flour proteins, which gives you a softer bite that lasts. It is the only bagel on this entire list carrying a hardened fat, and the plain version has it too, right alongside the propionic acid and the phosphoric acid. The real kicker is where it sits on the label. It's above things you'd expect to matter more, which tells you there's a meaningful amount of it in there. And look at what those 4 preservatives are actually for. Calcium propionate and sorbic acid fight mold. Propionic acid fights mold. Phosphoric acid is an acidifier that makes the whole system work harder and longer. That is 4 separate lines of defense against time in a bag of bread you're going to finish in a week. At Aldi, that 20-ounce bag runs about $2.19. Weekly for a year, that's roughly $114. And it's worth saying that Aldi's plain bagels and the everything bagels are not the same recipe. So if you buy these, read the specific bag in your hand. And the texture tells on itself. It's pillowy. It compresses under the knife instead of pushing back at you, and it goes slightly waxy on the tongue after the second bite. That's the hardened fat coating the inside of your mouth. And once you notice it, you'll notice it every time. This is where the shelf gets weird. The chain built on stripping out the middleman and the marketing budget is running 4 preservatives and a hardened oil, under a brand name engineered to sound like an oven instead of a factory. Now the next brand is the one people defend in the comments because they think they're being good. Number 5, and I want to name the exact product before I name the brand, is Bagel Thins. Not the regular Thomas's bagels, the thin ones, in the flatter bag, 8 to a pack, sitting in the diet section of your brain right next to the yogurt. The pitch is simple enough. Fewer calories, same bagel. So ask the obvious question. How do you take a bagel and cut the calories nearly in half without making it smaller? Look at the ingredient list. The third ingredient, right after flour and water, is cellulose fiber. That's ahead of the sugar. That's ahead of the yeast. Cellulose fiber is purified plant fiber, and the reason it's in there is that it takes up room and adds bulk without adding calories your body can pull anything out of. It is filler, doing the job that flour used to do, and it is the entire trick behind the calorie count on the front of that bag. Then there's Datem, which is a dough emulsifier, and sodium stearoyl lactylate, which is another one. 2 emulsifiers because a dough that's part fiber doesn't behave like dough anymore, and needs chemical help to hold together on the line. Datem is one of the 44 ingredients Texas named in its 2025 warning label law, and I'll get to that law properly in a few minutes. And the eating experience matches the ingredient list. It's dry, it's a little chalky at the edges, it toasts to cardboard if you look away, and it doesn't hold butter the way real bread does, because fiber doesn't behave like starch. At Kroger, 8 of these run $5.29. Work it out per bagel and you're paying more than you would for the regular Thomas's bag for less actual bagel. Weekly for a year, that's about $275. That's nearly $70 a year more than the full-size version of the same brand. That's diet theater. Not that a lighter bagel exists, that's fine, some people want that. The problem is charging a premium for the version with less food in it and selling that as the healthy choice. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But the next one is sneakier because the front of that bag is trying to sell you a farm. Number 4 is Pepperidge Farm. Look at the packaging for a second. Farmhouse, the little horse-drawn wagon, warm browns, craft paper texture, the whole visual language of somebody's kitchen instead of somebody's plant. This is a brand that's been building trust with older shoppers since the 1930s, and it has been owned by the Campbell Soup Company since 1961. That wagon has been corporate property for 65 years. Turn the everything bagels around. Calcium propionate and sorbic acid to extend freshness, monoglycerides, and then, near the end, cellulose and xanthan and/or guar gums. Read that last one again, and/or. They are telling you in print that they don't know which gum is in the bag you're holding because it depends on which one was cheaper the week that batch ran. That is a premium costume with a commodity supply contract underneath it. And cellulose is worth stopping on for a second because it's the same family of ingredient we just saw doing the heavy lifting in the bagel thins. There it was sold to you as fiber for your diet. Here it isn't sold to you at all. It's just in the bag, near the bottom of the list, quietly holding the texture together. At H-E-B, that 21-ounce bag is $4.88, which puts it near the top of the aisle. Buy it weekly for a year and you're at about $254, which is more than double what the Aldi bag costs you. And the cellulose and the gums are doing real structural work in there. They lock water into the crumb so it stays soft in the bag, and they give it a springy bounce that your hand reads as fresh when you squeeze the package in the store. It's a good imitation. Bite one warm and it's genuinely pleasant, soft, a little sweet, springy. It just isn't chewy, and it never will be, because there's no boiled skin there to resist your teeth. That is the part that bothers me. Farmhouse on the front, and a gum they won't even commit to on the back. Now the next one isn't really a bagel at all, and it's probably in your freezer right now for the grandkids. Number 3 is Bagel Bites from Kraft Heinz. 40 in a box, $8.97 at Walmart. Every grandparent in America has bought these at some point, and that is exactly why they belong on this list. Look at what's actually on that box. The cheese blend is part skim mozzarella cheese, modified food starch, and skim milk. The starch is listed second, inside the cheese itself. That starch is there to make a smaller amount of real cheese stretch further and melt without splitting into a puddle of oil. It's the cheese doing an impression of more cheese. The sauce has methyl cellulose in it. That's a plant-derived thickener that turns to gel when it gets hot, which is what keeps the sauce sitting on top of the bagel instead of running off it in your oven. It's also the active ingredient in a lot of bulk laxatives. Same compound, different job. And I'm not being cute about that, it's just what it is. And the pepperoni carries BHA and BHT. Both of those are on the Texas list of 44, both of them in the same topping. The bagel underneath is enriched flour, water, salt, invert cane syrup, yeast, and soybean oil. Invert cane syrup turns up 3 separate times across the whole product, once in the bagel, once in the sauce, and once more on its own near the end. Notice what that syrup is doing too. It's not just sweetening. Invert syrup holds on to water, which is how you keep a frozen product from turning to sawdust after 4 months in a freezer that gets opened 20 times a day. A box a week for a year is about $466. That's the biggest annual number on this entire list, by more than $150. And what you're getting for it is a rubbery disc with a starch-cut cheese cap that goes greasy in the pan and chalky when it cools. I'm not going to tell anybody to throw out a nostalgic freezer snack. Feed the grandkids, have a nice afternoon. I'm telling you that the word bagel on that box is doing an enormous amount of heavy lifting, and that you're paying pizza money for starch, syrup, and a preservative package. If this is already saving you from a bad shop, do me a favor and hit subscribe. We publish one of these every week. Now let's do that test I promised, because you can settle this in your own kitchen in about a minute. Go get a bagel out of the bread box, and don't cut it yet. First, turn it over and look at the bottom. A boiled bagel goes in the water, comes out round, and gets turned in the oven, so the bottom is curved and the thing is a circle from every angle. A steamed one sits on a tray the whole bake and never gets flipped, so the bottom is flat and spread and the bagel is an oval. Second, look at the shine. Boiling gelatinizes the surface starch, and that's your glossy skin. Steam leaves it dull and dry looking. Third, if it's got seeds, run your thumb across the top. On a boiled bagel, that skin grips them and they stay put. On a steamed one, the toppings went on before the steam, so half of them come off on your hand. Now cut it. A boiled bagel shows a clear line where the skin stops and the crumb starts. A steamed one is the same soft texture the whole way through, like a bread roll with a hole in it. Flat bottom, dull surface, seeds on your hand, one texture inside. That's steam, and every brand I've named so far fails at least 2 of those 4. The 3 coming up pass all 4. But we've got 2 more first. Number 2 is Thomas's, the biggest name in the bagel aisle, the yellow and blue bag that's been in American kitchens forever. Bimbo Bakeries USA owns it, and that's the same company that owns Lender's from number 8, and the same company that makes those bagel thins from number 5. Start with the blueberry and pay attention to the order, because the order is the entire story. Flour, water, sugar, yeast, wheat gluten, cornmeal, salt, dextrose, the preservatives, natural and artificial flavors, monoglycerides, soybean oil, cellulose gum, citric acid, then red 40 lake, then xanthan gum, then blue 2 lake, and then, finally, dried blueberries, then blue 1 lake, then sucralose. So there are 2 food dyes listed ahead of the actual fruit, and a third listed after it. By FDA rules, ingredients run in descending order by weight, which means there is more red and blue dye in that bagel than there is blueberry. And there's sucralose in there. That's Splenda, in a bagel that already contains sugar and dextrose. Nobody put that on the front of the bag. Now flip over to the cinnamon raisin, caramel color, and sucralose again. That warm brown you're looking at is not all coming from cinnamon and molasses doing their thing in a hot oven. Some of it was poured in. And then there's the sourdough. Look at that label and try to find the culture. There's baker's yeast and there's vinegar. Sourdough is supposed to be a slow fermentation with a live starter, and what's on that list instead is an acid that gets you to sour in an afternoon. And that's the pattern I want you to see across all 3 of those bags. The blueberry gets color, the cinnamon raisin gets color, the sourdough gets an acid. In every case, something that's supposed to come from an ingredient or from time is coming from a bottle instead, because ingredients and time are the 2 most expensive things in a bakery. At Walmart, the plain 6 count is $3.97, which is about $206 a year if it's your weekly bag. And honestly, the plain one is a perfectly decent soft bagel. That isn't the issue. The issue is that the fruit bagel is largely a coloring project, the sourdough is vinegar wearing a word, and none of that is on the front of the package. And the final brand is where the label game stops being clever and starts being documented in law. Number 1 is Sara Lee, also Bimbo Bakeries USA. That is 4 of the 8 brands on this list sitting under one company, which is something worth holding on to. The product is the Deluxe Blueberry Bagel, and I'm just going to read you the back of it because I don't need to add anything. After the flour and water and sugar and the preservatives, you get natural and artificial flavors, grain vinegar, rice flour, xanthan gum, soybean oil, mono and diglycerides, monocalcium phosphate, red 40 lake, cornstarch, blue 2 lake, then dried blueberries, then soy lecithin, then blue 1 lake, then red 40, then potassium iodate, then corn syrup, corn flour, modified cornstarch, cottonseed fiber, cellulose gum, citric acid, blue 2, green 3, and blue 1. 7 separate color entries, some of them ahead of the blueberries, some behind. And cottonseed fiber, which is exactly what it sounds like. Count what's actually doing the work in there. You've got corn syrup, corn flour, cornstarch, and modified cornstarch, all 4, on one bagel. You've got cottonseed fiber for bulk and cellulose gum for texture. And then you've got 7 colors making the whole arrangement look like fruit. Now here's the receipt. In June of 2025, Texas signed Senate Bill 25 into law. It names 44 ingredients, and starting January 1st of 2027, any food sold in that state containing one of them has to carry a warning label. Blue 1 is number 7 on that list, blue 2 is number 8, green 3 is 19, potassium iodate is 29, red 40 is 34. 5 of the 44 in one bagel. And I want you to hear the exact wording Texas wrote because there's nothing vague about it. The label has to read, quote, "Warning, this product contains an ingredient that is not recommended for human consumption by the appropriate authority in Australia, Canada, the European Union, or the United Kingdom," end quote. In Europe and Canada, potassium iodate is not an approved flour treatment, just not here. $3.58 at Walmart. Weekly for a year, that's about $186 on a bagel where the coloring outweighs the fruit. And in December of 2025, food industry trade groups sued Texas in federal court to try to stop that law. So the warning is being fought over right now, while the bag sits on the shelf with all of it still in there. Now, if you've made it this far, here's the payoff. 3 bagel brands that are actually what they say they are, and one of them costs less than that Sara Lee bag in your kitchen. The surprise isn't that the real ones are better, it's how little they had to do differently to stay honest. Number 3 is Essa Bagel, 1976, 1st Avenue and 21st Street in Manhattan. Jean and Florence Wilpon opened it with Florence's brother Aaron Wenzelberg, and the family came out of Austrian baking. The name means eat a bagel in Yiddish. Within 2 years of opening, they've been voted number 1 in the tri-state area. Florence died in 2013. Her sister Muriel and her niece Melanie took it over. And 49 years in, they are still kettle boiling and still rolling every bagel by hand. Rolling by hand is the expensive decision. A machine shapes thousands an hour with nobody standing over it. A person shapes a fraction of that, and you pay them for every hour they're there. Add the kettle, add the labor to drop and turn and pull each bagel individually, and you are carrying a cost per unit that a steam tunnel does not have. They've absorbed that cost for nearly 50 years, while everyone around them stopped. Here's your proof, and it isn't printed on anything. It's the bagel itself. It's enormous, it's round from every angle, the skin has a real gloss on it, and when you pull it apart, it fights you. That's the boil. You don't need a certification when the object in your hand tells you. People don't call these fancy. They call them huge, and they call them the ones that still taste the way bagels are supposed to taste. You can buy them in the New York shops at roughly a dozen for $20, about $1.70 each, and they ship nationwide through Goldbelly. Plain brown box, plain logo, no claims on it anywhere. Nothing about that packaging is trying to talk you into anything. Number 2 is Panera bread, and this one is sitting in your regular grocery store. Ken and Linda Rosenthal started the St. Louis Bread Company in 1987 in Kirkwood, Missouri. Ken had gone out to San Francisco, got completely taken with a sourdough bakery there, and spent a year training under the owner before he came home. He and Linda opened with $150,000 of their own money and a small business administration loan for the same amount again. Obon Pan bought them in '93 and renamed the whole thing Panera in '97. Panera publishes what they call a no-no list. It's a public commitment to keep artificial preservatives, sweeteners, flavors, and colors out of their food. That commitment costs them shelf life, and shelf life is money. Every extra day a bag can't sit in a store is a loss they eat instead of handing to you as a preservative. Now here's the proof, and this is the part I want you to actually go check. Turn the bag over. Enriched flour, water, brown sugar, cultured wheat flour, sugar, canola oil, yeast, sea salt, malted wheat flour, deactivated yeast, sunflower lecithin, vinegar, wheat flour, enzymes. That's the whole thing. And look at what isn't on it. There's no dye, no sucralose, no calcium propionate, and not a single gum anywhere on that label. Not one of the 44 Texas ingredients either. The reviews land in the same place every time. People say it eats like an actual bakery bagel instead of a bread roll. It's the 18-ounce bag, 6 pre-sliced, and it lives in the bread aisle, not the bakery case. Look for the plain white and green package with the Woman in Loaf logo. Boring label, and that is the point. And if this ranking is useful, hit the like button. It really helps the channel cut through the algorithm. Number 1 is Trader Joe's, and this is the one that makes the entire skip list look ridiculous. Joe Colomb opened the first store in Pasadena in 1967. The reason that matters for bagels is the business model, not the man. Trader Joe's owns its own labels. When they decide an additive comes out, it comes out. There's no brand manager at another company to negotiate with and no national ad budget to protect. So look at what they actually do with that. Trader Joe's says the dough is proofed in high humidity, then set out to ferment slowly, then kettle boiled, fully submerged in boiling water, and then baked in a hearth tunnel oven. Fully submerged. That's the genuine process on a grocery store bagel at grocery store money. And the label backs the story up. Flour, water, sugar, and then under 2% of wheat gluten, salt, a mold inhibitor made from cultured dextrose, yeast, distilled vinegar, enzymes, monoglycerides, and sesame flour. No artificial preservatives, no dough conditioners. 6 bagels, a 510-gram bag, running around $2.50. That is less per bagel than Thomas's, less than Pepperidge Farm, less than the Bagel Fins. A boiled bagel for less money than the steamed one with a dye in it. And here's the kicker, you could make these yourself. Bread flour, water, yeast, salt, and a spoonful of honey or barley malt syrup. About 20 minutes of actual work, an overnight rest in the fridge, 60 seconds aside in boiling water, then 20 minutes in the oven. We'll put the method in the description. The reviews are consistent about one thing. People say it has the pull. That's the boil, and you can taste it. Here's the one thing worth remembering. On a Sara Lee blueberry bagel, 2 food dyes are listed ahead of the blueberries and 3 more are listed after. And by FDA ordering rules, that means there is more coloring in it than fruit. The worst on this list is that Sara Lee blueberry bag, carrying 5 ingredients Texas will require a warning label on by 2027. The best is the Trader Joe's plain bagel, kettle boiled and fully submerged, for around $2.50. So do this on your next grocery run. Pick up the bag and look at the bottom of the bagel through the plastic. If it's flat and the bagel is an oval, put it back. Next week, we pulled apart a shredded cheese brand half this country buys and found out what that anti-caking powder actually is and why your cheese stopped melting the way it used to. Drop the brand you still trust in the comments. We're building the list together. Hit subscribe if this changed how you shop today. We'll see you in the next aisle.